After the marriage of Vidura to Sulabha, Satyavati, recognizing Vidura's unwavering dedication to his ministerial duties, suggested that he take a break and embark on a Vihara yatra with his wife. She observed that Vidura, always absorbed in the affairs of the state, had rarely taken time to enjoy his personal life. Even Dhritarashtra, acknowledging the need for Vidura to find balance and rejuvenate, supported the idea wholeheartedly. Thus, Vidura, along with Sulabha, set out on a peaceful journey, allowing them both to momentarily escape the responsibilities of the court and immerse themselves in the beauty and tranquility of nature. And when life returned to a semblance of normalcy in Hastinapura, Paandu made a shocking declaration that he would not reclaim the throne. His words sent ripples of astonishment through the royal court. Bhishma and Kripacharya, filled with disbelief, questioned Pandu's reasoning. It was then that Paandu, with great sorrow, revealed the curse bestowed upon him by Kindama Muni. Upon hearing this, Kunthi and Madri were utterly devastated, their hopes for a future shattered in an instant. Bhishma, a man of immense wisdom and strength, was deeply pained by the revelation that the next king of Hastinapura would not be the son of the heroic Paandu, a warrior who had once seemed destined to rule and protect the land. Satyavati, Ambika, and Ambulika were similarly moved by the suddenness of this decision, their hearts heavy with the weight of the future. Even Dhritarashtra, who had harbored a simmering resentment toward Paandu, could not help but feel a deep sadness for his younger brother. Overcome by emotion, Dhritarashtra embraced Paandu, offering him a rare moment of brotherly concern, despite their long-standing rivalry. Paandu, resolute in his decision, announced that he would spend the rest of his days in the forest, living the life of a Muni, dedicating himself to penance and detachment from worldly pleasures. Kanika, the royal guru, suggested that Paandu perform danas and yagnas to alleviate the weight of the curse and ease the mental burden it brought. However, Paandu, steadfast in his resolve, refused to deviate from his chosen path. Despite the attempts of Bhishma, Satyavati, and his mother Ambulika to sway his decision, Paandu remained unyielding. Kunti, ever loyal to her husband, insisted that she would accompany him into the forest. Paandu, concerned for her well-being, explained that the curse was meant for him alone and that she need not share in his fate. Yet Kunti, with unwavering devotion, reminded him that every blessing and every curse is shared between husband and wife, and that she would prefer a life of hardship with him over a life of luxury without him. Madri, too, pleaded with Paandu, asking to join them in exile. Reluctantly, Paandu agreed to take both his wives with him into the wilderness. Meanwhile, Gandhari discovered that she was pregnant. Overjoyed by the news, she hurried to share it with Dhritarashtra, as she was unaware of Pandu's momentous announcement. The happiness in the room was palpable, but beneath it all lay the shadow of sorrow over Pandu's fate. Unsure of how to respond, the court remained silent, their emotions torn between joy and grief. Paandu, recognizing the gravity of the moment, was the first to congratulate Gandhari. With grace, he remarked that perhaps the gods had willed that the future king should be born from Gandhari's womb. With that, Paandu bid farewell to the royal family and, along with Kunti and Madri, departed from the palace. The entire royal household was left in deep sorrow at the departure of the great warrior who had shifted the balance of power across the Bharata continent. Yet, amidst this sea of grief, one figure was secretly pleased. Shakuni. He seized the moment to whisper insidious words into Dhritarashtra's ear, reminding him of how Pandu had always sought to keep him from the throne and humiliate him. Shakuni slyly suggested that it was Pandu's own scheming that had brought about his tragic fate, slowly easing Dhritarashtra's sadness as memories of Pandu's dominance over him began to surface. As Pandu, accompanied by his wives Kunthi and Madri, walked through the streets of Hastinapura on his way to the forest, the people gathered in deep sorrow, aware that their beloved king was leaving them. They appreciated Pandu for his unwavering bravery in protecting the kingdom, throwing flowers at his feet as he passed by. Pandu, deeply moved by their respect, felt a sense of fulfillment despite the weight of his fate. Kunti and Madri, though grateful for the honor shown to their husband, could not help but feel sadness for the tragic destiny that lay ahead for them. Amba, consumed by her desire for vengeance, entered into deep penance from the very day she left the battlefield of Kurukshetra. After the battle between Bhishma and Parashurama, her singular goal was the death of Bhishma, and she performed intense tapasya, invoking divine intervention to fulfill her wish. After many years of unwavering devotion, the day finally arrived when Lord Shiva appeared before her. Without uttering a single word, the Lord bestowed upon her a silent boon. Through her heightened consciousness, Amba understood that she would be the reason for Bhishma's death, not in this life, but in the next. With her purpose now clear and her heart set on the divine will, Amba's long and arduous penance finally came to an end. No longer burdened by uncertainty, she moved with a calm yet fierce resolve. She carefully gathered dry sticks and branches, placing them methodically into a towering pyre. Each step she took was filled with the gravity of her decision. Yet she showed no hesitation and no fear, only the determined fire of her unwavering mission. As the fiery pyre stood ready before her, Amba's face reflected a strange peace, a peace born from the knowledge that her life had not been in vain, and that her next existence would fulfill the divine promise. With eyes closed in solemn prayer and arms outstretched, she walked into the consuming flames, fully aware that this act was only the beginning, not the conclusion of her destiny. Destiny bound with the fall of Bhishma in her next life. Even while the fire consumed her mortal body, she embraced the fire not as an end, but as a gateway to her next incarnation. After facing the stinging humiliation of Hastinapura's initial rejection in the presence of his ministers and commanders, Drupada, the proud king of Panchala, resolved never to rely on the strength of other kingdoms again. The rejection had shaken his stature, but it ignited in him an unyielding determination to fortify his kingdom from within. He envisioned Panchala that would stand strong, independent, and invincible, and thus embarked on an ambitious mission to build his own mighty army. Drupada scoured every corner of his kingdom, recruiting the strongest men into his forces. He instilled in them a fierce dedication not to the king, but to the kingdom itself, fostering a deep-rooted loyalty to Panchala. This principle of unwavering allegiance would ensure that, even if fate led them to serve another ruler, their hearts would always belong to their homeland. To arm his soldiers with the best weapons, Drupada sought out the most skilled swordsmiths from his and neighboring allied kingdoms. Under his direction, they forged new, advanced swords, lighter, faster, and deadlier than any previously known. He also pioneered the creation of compact bows, threaded with durable deerskin, capable of shooting arrows with the precision and distance of larger bows, but with far greater ease. To attract more recruits, Drupada offered his warriors better pay and benefits than other kingdoms, ensuring that the finest men flocked to his banners. Within a remarkably short time, his army swelled to 7 times its previous size, each soldier not only physically formidable, but also equipped with cutting-edge weaponry and unbreakable resolve. At his side was his wife, Prashati, a woman of both loyalty and intellect. Drupada often sought her counsel in matters of governance and strategy, and she became his trusted advisor. Though he had built a formidable kingdom and army, a shadow of dissatisfaction loomed over Drupada's heart. Despite all his efforts, the memory of the humiliation he faced after Hastinapura's initial message lingered. Even though a second message had arrived, correcting the first, the damage to his reputation had been done. Drupada suspected that Bhishma, the mastermind behind Hastinapura's decisions, had deliberately orchestrated the 2 conflicting messages to mock and belittle him. No matter how much he strengthened his forces, Drupada knew that his army alone was not enough to defeat the legendary Bhishma, who was more than a warrior. He was an indomitable force. The king realized that mortal strength would not suffice. He needed divine intervention. Burdened by this thought, Drupada turned to Prashati for guidance. With her usual wisdom, she suggested that they seek the favor of Lord Shiva through intense penance, praying for a son who would possess the strength and power to vanquish Bhishma. Drupada, filled with newfound hope and resolve, prepared himself for this spiritual pursuit, understanding that only divine intervention could tilt the scales of fate in his favor. Thus, the king who sought to reshape the destiny of Panchala through the might of his army now looked to the gods for the power to fulfill his deepest desire, a son destined to not only challenge but defeat Bhishma. Drupada's longing went beyond mere victory. It was driven by the need to restore his honor. He wished to strike at Bhishma's very ego, to make him face the same humiliation that had scarred Drupada in front of his court. Jarasandha responded to Kamsa's message with a strategic concern. He acknowledged that, although Ugrasena was the king of Mathura, familial bonds between its feudatories and external powers could not be allowed to bring about a conflict of loyalties, especially when the future balance between Hastinapura and Magadha was at stake. Jarasandha emphasized that, since Devaki, the feudatory of Mohavana, had already allied himself with Hastinapura by marrying off one of his daughters, Sulabha, to Vidura, his other daughter, Devaki, should be wed to someone firmly rooted in Mathura. This would ensure that any allegiance to Magadha remained unquestioned and unwavering. Keeping this in mind, Kamsa waited patiently for the opportune moment to act, and now that moment had arrived. He sought out Vasudeva at the stadium in Mathura. It was an unusual sight, for the gentle-natured Vasudeva, who normally abhorred violence, was intently watching sword fights and wrestling matches. Kamsa, curious about this unexpected change in his friend's behavior, approached Vasudeva with friendly inquiry. Vasudeva, weighed down by sorrow, shared the turmoil that had plagued his heart. Despite his marriage to Rohini and subsequent marriages to Vrikadevi, Madira, Bhadra, and Paravi, none of his wives had borne him a child. The absence of children cast a shadow of despair over his life, leaving him questioning whether he would ever experience the joy of fatherhood. It was this anguish that had driven him to the stadium that day, not for the sport, but to seek solace in his friend Sini, a great warrior from the Vrishni lineage who was competing in the arena. As they spoke, Sini finished his bout and approached Vasudeva. Kamsa, recognizing the depth of his friend's pain, seized the moment to share news from Devaka's house. The swayamvara for Devaki had been arranged, and Kamsa suggested that Vasudeva attend and consider marrying her. Although Vasudeva had been wed several times before and doubted whether another marriage would change his fortunes, Sini and Kamsa both urged him to take this opportunity. Sini, always the voice of optimism, reminded Vasudeva that fate often worked in mysterious ways, and they never truly knew what the future held. Encouraged by his two closest friends, Vasudeva agreed to attend Devaki's swayamvara. Sini, ever loyal, offered to accompany him, ensuring that Vasudeva would not face this new chapter of his life alone. Thus, with a mixture of hope and uncertainty, Vasudeva prepared to embark on another journey in search of the family he longed for.